And actually, I need to stream the whole screen so you guys can see what I'm doing. Okay. So we're just going to go over exporting the web build for the midterm so that we can just test. We can publish on itch and then test the games in the browser. So I'm going to go to Godot and open my game and click edit. And so what I want to do is export a playable version of the game. So just like in Pascal, we have the Pascal file that's the original art that we can edit, and then we have the exported art to put in the game. In Godot, we have the files that we edit, which is our project, but if we want somebody else to play the game, we don't want to send them our whole project. We just want an export of the build of the game so that they can just play that. So a couple settings that I want to make sure I've set before I export the game. I want to know which level I'm going to export. So right now we just have one level. So I'm going to make sure level 1 is my default level, and then I'm going to test building the game. So to make sure you have the right default level, you can go to project and go to project settings. And in the run section, there's a field for the main scene. So I'm just on the first tab in general, and it's one of the first options under application, the run section. And so I'm going to go to the main scene and click on the folder here and just go to my levels, and I'm just going to load level 1. So later we'll have more levels, but for now we just need level 1. And I might want to check on some other things, like I have the size right, and I have resizable turned off, but that should be good enough. So now we can test building the game. Normally when I'm testing my game, I use this button that looks like a movie clapper. That's the play scene button. And this plays whatever scene is open. But the main play button here actually plays the whole project. And so that's what it's going to look like when we distribute it to people on itch. So I'm going to try building the scene. And let's just do a quick playthrough and see if it works. Oops. Well, actually, this is one part that definitely doesn't work. So I don't want my game to have something that can crash, and I just have to close the game and restart it. So it's not the end of the world, but I'm just going to do a quick fix for this. We haven't written the part that we can go to project and we can go to export. And this is going to bring up our export window. And right now there's nothing in here. So we have to give it a platform that we want to export to. So if we click add here, you can see there's a bunch of different platforms. For the midterm, we're just going to stick with HTML5. And right now I have a bunch of red text here because I don't actually have this part of Godot downloaded. So we have to go to manage our export templates. So unless you've done this before, you'll probably see the same thing. So you can just click on manage export templates and it'll bring you right here. If you don't see that for some reason, you can just go to the editor and go to manage export templates here. So you can access it through the main menu as well. So then we want to just download our export template. So we're just going to click download and install. And this will take a second, hopefully not too long. And once we have this, we'll be able to build our HTML page. This is a little bit bigger than I thought it would be, but we can just give that a second to download. Okay, we're making some progress. And the reason Godot puts this stuff separately is so that you can download Godot very quickly without having to download all of the assets at the beginning. So some stuff we have to download later. although this is a lot more than I remember it being. Okay, so once we have those ready, we can go back to export. And so now you can see that red text is gone and we have some options here. So for our HTML5 project, this is for a web-based project. We don't really have to do a lot of stuff here. There's a lot of different options. So we could change stuff. We could add an icon, but we're not going to go over this stuff right now. We don't really need to do too much. There's also some options for the resources. We can say export all resources in the project, or if we had a really big project with a lot of files, you could say export selected scenes and dependencies. And so you could choose which scenes you want to export. So I'm not going to worry about this because I don't really have a lot of files, and I don't really have any files that aren't being used by this scene. There's like a couple of levels and stuff like that, but those files are pretty small. So to avoid any errors, I'm just going to say export all resources. But if you end up having a file that's like 100 megabytes or something like that, you might want to try export selected scenes, in which case you just go through and select all of your scenes, and then it'll actually find the dependencies or the components that go along with those scenes. One thing that we do have in here is like this 270 assets folder, and so you may still be using some of the scripts from this folder. So you would want to make sure to include that. But again, there's not a lot of information in this folder either, so it's probably easier just to go with export all resources. If this doesn't work for your specific game for some reason, we can look at a better way to do this. But other than that, this is pretty much everything we need to do. And so we can go to export project. And here's the one trick that we have to be careful about. It's going to name your HTML file after your project name. And that's fine if you were going to run this on your own website. But since we're hosting it on itch.io, itch.io is going to expect your HTML file to be called index.html. Just like if you've ever taken MMP 100 or another HTML class, you know that most websites have index.html. So we have to rename this index.html if we want it to work on itch.io. If you don't do that, we can always change it later. But if we do it now, that'll save us some time. So next, I want to put this build in a folder. So I'm going to click Create Folder and call it Builds. So it's separate from everything else. And then in there, I might have multiple builds. So I'm just going to create another folder and call this Web. So if I make a Mac or a PC build later, I can save that in a different place. So just to keep things organized, I made an extra builds and then web folder. And then I'm going to click save, and it's going to take a second to export. And now if I go to File Explorer and go to my game project and go into builds, here's the web version. And you can see there's index.html, and then everything else you can notice is named with the same name. It changed the name of everything to index. So index.js, index.pack, index.png, all these different files. So that doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what these files are called. As long as our HTML file is index.html, it should run in itch.io fine. The one last thing that we have to do before we upload this to itch.io is we have to zip this folder. So if I right click on the web folder and go to, on the Mac, it's probably just going to be in this main menu. But on PC, I have to go to send to and then compressed zip folder. And it's going to compress it and put it in an archive. So it'll be web.zip or something like that. You can change this name. The name of this doesn't really matter, but it has to be in a zip folder. That's what we're going to upload to itch.io on Thursday. So that's all the steps for exporting. It's not too bad. If you have any questions for your specific build, we could go over it. And we'll upload this on Thursday on itch.io and we'll test it. And if you have future changes that you want to make to your game, so if I go back here and I add new stuff to the level or do new things, I can always go back to project, go to export again, and click export project again, and then just save it here. And see it says file exists overwrite. I'll just say okay, and that'll overwrite my previous version. But I have to remember the zip file. So now this folder is updated, but the zip file is not. The zip file is an archive of the previous version. So I have to delete this zip file and then recompress it. And now it's ready to go. Sometimes people will save like multiple copies of their builds so that they can like have different versions and stuff like that. But we're just going to keep this web.zip for now. And so if you want to build for other platforms like Mac or Windows, you can try those as well. It's pretty similar process. There might be some parameters that you want to change, but for the most part, it's going to be the same thing. So we'll probably go over that later in the semester when we do our final project. But for the midterm, having a web-based version will be good because it'll make it easy for everybody to play the games and test the games we've got. Yeah, yeah. Uh, yeah. Yeah, if you want to put it on your portfolio, you could link to the itch page. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, you could embed it directly into your website as well. Yeah. Okay, so that's it for exporting. I'll figure out how to get the player to reset and then maybe do an update with that. But yeah, that's it for the demo for today.